How we doing? How we doing? This is Destination Denver, Colorado, and today we are comparing Denver, Colorado's two largest suburbs, Aurora versus Lakewood, and we're starting right now. All right, this is Destination Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jimmy Everett, and if you're interested in learning all the ins and outs, pros and cons to moving to or around the Denver metro area, then this is the channel for you. So that subscribe button and notification icon you see on your screen, make sure you click on that as I'm dropping new videos for you each and every week. And as much as I try to be a little creative on camera, I'm also a licensed mortgage broker covering the entire state of Colorado and team with some of the Front Range's most talented realtors. And we're helping people move here each and every day. So the number and email you see on your screen, know that I'm always the person, answer your phone calls, answer your texts, answer your emails. They're winning if you need me. Now that we're done with that fun-filled stuff, let's get to what we're here for, and that is comparing Denver's two biggest suburbs, Lakewood to the west, Aurora to the east, head to head. Let's go. So when you talk about Aurora and Lakewood, you are talking your classic east versus west battle. And these are two communities that have a lot of similarities and a lot of things that make each of them unique. Now, again, being as they both neighbor and hug Denver, if you will, as you get closer to Denver. These are communities that started to be formed in the late 1800s, getting into the 1900s. Both incorporated in the mid 1900s, and then both just continued to develop out and further away from Denver. Now, you'll see within Aurora, different pockets of communities in Lakewood. And so when we talk about the size of them, first and foremost, Aurora is the bigger of the two suburbs, both massive. But Aurora, not just from a square mile standpoint, it stretches north of Denver, south of Denver, and then has all sorts of room to grow east, whereas Lakewood butts up against towns like Golden, Morrison, and then into the Front Range. The population of Aurora sits at about 380,000 people. It is the third largest city or town in the state of Colorado, behind Denver and behind Colorado Springs. Whereas Lakewood has a population of roughly 155 to 160,000. So after you have the drop off of if you will, of Denver, Colorado Springs, and Aurora, most of the bigger towns, use air quotes, most of the bigger towns or cities, suburbs of Colorado will sit at that 160,000 population mark and lower. Lakewood is, to me, the biggest suburb of Colorado. Now, from a diversity standpoint, you will tend to see a more diverse population in Aurora, and for a lot of different factors. Aurora really butts up against the city of Denver, a lot of different communities within that, a rich history of diversity. And Aurora overall, as we're going to get into, has more affordability. So there are just more options. You have a lot more, different families, different backgrounds, different people moving to Colorado and going there. Among that, obviously, you also have a larger population. You have more than twice the population of Lakewood. So that long history, you'll see more diversity there. Now, Lakewood tends to have a younger population up until more recent years, a younger population, young professionals, families, and retirees. That has, I think, become a lot more comparable over the last handful of years. And Lakewood for a long time was predominantly white. Now it has a growing Latino community. My wife and I are helping with that. But when it comes to diversity, Lakewood was lagging. I think that is starting to improve as time goes by. Now, we certainly need to compare the affordability of both. And one thing that is really going to make these different is housing. Your cost of living, your going out, your restaurants, your amenities, things of that nature are going to be somewhat similar. There might be neighborhoods where you get a deal more than another, but for the most part, it's going to be a wash. Housing is where Aurora will tend to have more affordability than Lakewood will, for a couple reasons. One, there's only so much land available in Lakewood. It has a limited amount of growth. And another reason we're going to get into development as far as Lakewood, but there aren't as many newer communities in Lakewood. There's less to pick from, if you will. So price points as far as homes and as far as rents tend to be higher. Aurora, because of its size and because of the different neighborhoods and options it gives, tends to have more affordability As far as Denver in general, it is one of the more affordable options for people. So you see a lot of people looking there for rentals, and you see a lot of people moving there for first-time home buyers and that first option when they're moving to Colorado. From an education standpoint, Lakewood is covered by Jefferson County Public Schools. Higher ranked overall, you'll tend to see high marks for them, and you'll have a mix of public, private, charter schools, a lot of different options depending on your community. Aurora, on the other hand, is covered by Aurora Public Schools and then the Cherry Creek School District. And the reason I mentioned Cherry Creek is because consistently the Cherry Creek School District is one of the highest rated school districts in the entire state of Colorado. So one of the key factors to people exploring Aurora is the fact that they can be in an affordable community for the most part, if you can use the term affordable in Colorado, but an affordable community and still have access to that highly rated of a school district. And to just cover some details as far as healthcare, Lakewood, home to St. Anthony's Hospital, large medical center there up near Green Mountain where I grew up. And over in Aurora, the Anschutz campus, which has been a major economic and just a very positive for Aurora. Anschutz is home to the University of Colorado Hospital, Children's Hospital on that campus. Also out in Aurora is the largest VA hospital in Colorado. So a lot going on around that area of Aurora, and that's played a big factor in the communities around that. It's been very beneficial for Aurora. Now we talk about infrastructure. So Lakewood, again, because you're talking about a large suburb, but a lot of it has been in place for a large period of time. You're not seeing new communities being built in Lakewood. So as far as the infrastructure, your roads, your key access points, those have been in place for a long time. Lakewood does have access going up 6th Avenue, which comes straight out of Denver through the heart of Lakewood. Along 6th Avenue is a light rail station that can be very beneficial for people who are along that line. I don't think the light rail is necessarily something that a lot of people in Lakewood use, but if you're near those terminals, that can be helpful. Now, as far as Aurora, you have this mix because in Aurora, again, similar to Lakewood, you have some communities that have been around for decades. The roads have been there, the schools, everything, that infrastructure is in place. But then you also have places like the Southlands, like that we'll get into. You have the Aurora Highlands. These are newer communities. And Aurora, because it's all flat land moving east, it continues to build and build and build. So you have some established infrastructure and you have a lot of things that are needing to be built and developed. And because of this, we can't compare the two without at least talking a little bit about traffic and your drive times. So Aurora will tend to be, all in all, more congested than than Lakewood will. So Aurora will tend to be more congested from a traffic standpoint than Lakewood. Again, reason being, you've got a lot of service roads. You may not necessarily be near a highway or a faster access road. So you also have, again, twice the population. A lot of land, but twice the population, and some of those areas pretty dense. So your drive time, as an example, from parts of Aurora to Denver could be upwards of a half hour. Again, depending on that traffic, could be 45 minutes, depending on where you're coming from. Whereas with Lakewood, traffic can certainly get backed up, but not to the point that you might see in Aurora. Getting from the farthest point of Lakewood to Denver in bad traffic could be, I'd say, 25 minutes on the extreme, maybe 30 minutes if there's a wreck. But for the most part, where I am in Lakewood, I can get down into Denver in 15 minutes. You don't tend to see the same level of congestion in Lakewood as you do in Aurora. Both have their moments, but overall Lakewood tends to be better as far as drive time. And here it comes. That's always the point when people start commenting. I drive from Aurora to Denver in 7 minutes. And I'm going to tell you that's because you live 7 minutes from Denver. Now, when we talk about development, as I mentioned, so when you look at Lakewood, Lakewood kind of goes in rings. You have these communities that were built in the 50s and 60s, just outside of Denver, moving west. You get a few blocks later, a few miles farther west, you get into other communities like Green Mountain that were built in the 70s and 80s, another ring of these communities. And that's, in that ring, the homes were built between, say, 1972 and 1985, as you get farther and farther away. But when it comes to new development, there's not a whole lot to look at in Lakewood. Now, you can get into a terrific community we're going to talk about called Solterra, very popular. Solterra is the newest of developments for Lakewood, and really the only place you're going to see a lot of new construction. And there's still some development occurring there. Of course, you're going to get to a point where that continues to build. It'll probably stretch into other communities like Morrison and Littleton to our south, to our west. But that's where you're going to see most of the new development. Now, when it comes to Aurora, on the other hand, development is everywhere. So over the last several years, you've seen the Aurora Highlands begin their growth. As I mentioned earlier, the Anschutz campus being built really created a lot of development and restructure around that area of Aurora. And then as you get down to the Southlands Mall, an area we call the Southlands, but now you have areas like Talon's Reach and South Shore and Blackstone. So when it comes to development, and especially if you like the newer construction or the newer neighborhoods, things of that nature, odds are you're going to be looking at Aurora. Now, comparing walkability, I think both are kind of similar from the standpoint of it's going to be hit or miss. There are plenty of neighborhoods and regions of Lakewood that will allow you some level of walkability, but there really isn't a downtown region to Lakewood. I live not too far from Belmar, which is a large walkable mall for us. So people could, drive over or walk over to Belmar and enjoy that, but it's not like a downtown aspect to it. And I'm certainly not in a neighborhood where I'm going to walk over to a coffee shop. I think you see that kind of similar in Aurora. I do think there are some communities where you have a stretch of places you can go. And then the Southlands, same thing. I don't really see the neighborhoods in the Southlands, as an example. I don't see them having the quick walking access over to the Southlands Mall. They're driving over and then walking around. Now, as far as recreation, I love me some Lakewood. So Lakewood is home to Bear Creek Lake Park, William F. Hayden, which we call Green Mountain Park. And then you have a ton of local trails. And obviously, it's not in Lakewood, but Lakewood is very close to Red Rocks, the best amphitheater on the planet. And other people have said it too, so I'm not lying. And then obviously you have the Rockies right there. So when it comes to outdoors, mountain biking, trails, hiking, all of the things, Lakewood, I would say, has a leg up. Now, Aurora is not without its options. So Aurora, you have Cherry Creek State Park, really close by. You have Aurora Reservoir, which is out, again, in the Southlands. One thing I love about Aurora Reservoir is that there's no motorboats on it. You're not allowed to have engines. So you can go out paddle boarding, swimming, kayaking, really great place to hang out. I love Aurora Reservoir. And then you also have the South Platte River Trail that leads you up all the way down to Highlands Ranch. So some really cool amenities still in Aurora. And even though you are on the east side of town, living in Aurora does not mean that you don't have relatively quick access to get over to the mountains. It's not like you're a state over. You just might add another 20-30 minute drive time getting up to the hills. And as far as, culture attractions, things to do, both have their museums, both have their art exhibits, both have, just different things for you to get out and about and enjoy. When it comes to community events, Aurora hosts events like Global Fest, Summer in the City, their concert series there, and the Festival of Fantasy Parade. Now, for Lakewood, just close to me here in Belmar Park, you have Cider Days, which is kind of like a medieval art fest. I shouldn't even say medieval. Like, they're cider, but they're also selling the big turkey bones. There's all sorts of stuff. I don't even know why I said medieval. That really doesn't apply. It's cider, and it's eating a big turkey bone. Apparently, when I see a big turkey leg, that makes me think medieval. You can ignore me for the last 30 seconds. They also have a great concert series right over in the park with an outdoor amphitheater. You have stuff around Christmas. You have ice skating over in Belmar. So a lot of different events that bring the community together. Now, and maybe I should have added these earlier, but when you're thinking about these communities, popular neighborhoods you're going to want to check out. If you're looking at Lakewood, you're going to look at places like Belmar. You're going to look at Green Mountain, which is where I grew up and not too far from me now. And you're certainly going to look at Solterra, the newer development. Just north of us, kind of northwest to where I am located, is a neighborhood called Applewood. Also extremely desirable. Applewood's a great community. If you're looking to buy a house, not necessarily a lot of homes come up for sale in that community because of how popular it is, but definitely those four: Belmar, Green Mountain, Solterra, and Applewood. Now, Aurora, you're going to look at Cherry Creek. You're going to look at Southeast Aurora. You're going to look at Talon's Reach. You're going to look at Murphy Creek. You're going to look at, I mentioned South Shore already, Blackstone. A lot of great communities over in Aurora, and then the Aurora Highlands, which is gaining a lot of attention. Still a lot of construction there. So a lot of development in Aurora, and Aurora continues to build. It used to be on the other side of 225. they started to build, because 225 kind of wraps around. They started to build now E470, which is the highway that runs alongside South Shore and wraps around. Now they're starting to build on the other side of that. So a lot of positive things happening in Aurora. Something that, some folks mentioned to me, now in Lakewood and some of the older neighborhoods, you don't tend to see HOAs. You will in Solterra. Solterra has some different HOAs. It can be pretty pricey in there. And it's one of the few communities in Lakewood where they have some metro tax, where they have different HOA and property tax levels. So, especially if you're looking to buy in those areas, you want to pay attention to that. Now, Aurora, again, some of the older communities, you're not going to see it, but you will tend to see more HOAs, more metro taxes in some of the newer areas, newer developments in Aurora. So whereas, in older neighborhoods, in both, you're going to see fewer HOAs or maybe fewer covenants. They exist, but there's fewer. Get into some of the newer communities and you can expect some HOA, some type of oversight, if you will. And of course, I can't talk about Lakewood and Aurora anywhere in Colorado, but we can't talk about these two without talking about crime. Now, when I talk about them having a lot in common, Lakewood and Aurora have a lot of positives, but there are also communities in which people who live there will tell you there's areas of town that are probably less desirable than others. And it's easy to say that the closer you get to the city, the worse things get, or the worse statistically it may be. And that tends to be true statistically. The closer you get to a city, the more population density you see, the higher the statistics are as far as crime. Aurora and Lakewood are definitely two communities that have, some beautiful areas that you're going to live in, and there are going to be some areas that I think you should, do your due diligence. You should take a look at. You should spend some time in and make the determinations of whether you feel comfortable in those areas or not. My personal experience of Lakewood has been a very positive one. I've lived here the majority of my life and plan to continue to do so. I think that there are areas of Lakewood that I wouldn't necessarily move with my family. I think there are areas of Aurora where I would say the same. And this is a tough thing about making videos like this and talking about communities. I don't think I've ever lived in a big city, small town, random suburb where there weren't areas that you wanted to avoid. So I think you definitely want to do your due diligence there, your research there. But some of that reputation, Lakewood, we used to call it Lake Hood. Aurora has some, these negatives that people talk about. Really do your due diligence there, because I think those reputations, some are outdated, and depending on the location, some are still accurate. Watch me dancing that fine line. Just still gonna piss some people off, but it is what it is, and I try to do my best by you. But if you have some specific questions about regions of these two towns, Lord knows I've lived in one most of my entire life and I've spent plenty of time in the other. That's a perfect opportunity to hit me up with a phone call, a text, an email, knowing that I'm always the person answering those for you. This is Destination Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jimmy Everett. That was comparing Denver, Colorado's two largest suburbs, Lakewood versus Aurora. Until I see you next time. Peace.